So we've talked about radiant damage, and today is all about necrotic. Do you have a preference between the two?
I mean, necrotic is more flavorful, so I like it better. But if I was a player, I would want radiant more. There are more things that are immune or resistant to necrotic than there are immune or resistant to radiant.
I
So
would totally agree with that. Yeah.
radiant is a more powerful damage type, but necrotic is definitely more fun, especially from a DM perspective. Not a whole lot of players that are resistant or immune to necrotic damage, and you could wither them nicely.
Yeah.
I think it's all about the flavor because both of them can be quite flavorful. It's all about your campaign that you're running. Are they tending to go more necrotic or radiant? And whatever one they tend to go and be themselves, do the opposite and flavor it.
Mm-hmm. I tend to go more necrotic as a player. I don't know that I have very many that do radiant damage, but I play very chaotic characters. So
See,
and
I'm the
I
opposite.
don't really pay attention to mechanics and like all of that. I'm all just flavor. It's like what the character would have, not what is stronger. And my characters would definitely be more necrotic than radiant.
See, mine are more radiant for the same reason. I try and bust up the damage and everything. And although necrotic has that, I just like to use radiant. Maybe it's because who I am. But yes, I'm a more radiant whenever I'm playing my characters because I tend to be the good guy.
Yeah, I don't play very many good guys.
Don't worry, the last cleric I played got eaten thoroughly by 1,000 rats.
Yeah, the last cleric I played was a death cleric, so.
Well, the last barbarian you played was relatively naked most of the time, Tyler, as well, if I remember correctly.
Well, that's just being a barbarian.
We don't speak of that.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome to another It's a Mimic episode, where we continue our conversation on dragons in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Tyler, and with me today are Pepperina and Adam, and this episode is called Topaz Dragons, Dry and Antisocial Temperament.
In this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, this panel of Dungeon Masters is going to look at a kind of dragon that you may never ever run into, the Topaz Dragon. How does a surly and standoffish creature add to an interesting social encounter? What kind of tactics will a non-combatant use? And does this dragon give us any new way to think about necrotic damage?
These guys seem like absolutely frustrating NPCs to have to interact with. So before we get started, I just wanted to ask, what was the most frustrating NPC that you have ever encountered in D&D? And did you appreciate them, or did you just hate them? Do you guys want
Let's
to
roll for initiative.
Yeah. I got a 4.
I got an 11.
I got an 8.
It's so hard to answer this question because I'm always DMing. And
well, what's the most frustrating NPC that you've ever made as a dungeon master then?
That's what I was thinking, and I was going to go from is I made a character for my players who is a fat merchant. He almost looked like a blob, and he was incredibly pompous and sure of himself, and he had all the riches to prove it, and he flaunted it in front of all the characters whenever they were passing the roads. And my characters just wanted to strangle him, but he had so many armed guards that it was just not worth it. They played pranks on him though numerous times, and then eventually they found out he was actually a demon, and they wound up battling him, and it was a very close call, but they busted their butt out and made it out alive. But the most annoying NPC to them, and when they finally got to kill him as a demon, it's just like, oh, breath of fresh air.
My most frustrating NPC was Irina in Strahd, because Strahd was in love with her more than us, and we hated her for that. To the point where we pushed her in a fountain to try and kill her, to get rid of her so that Strahd would marry us.
This sounds like a bad episode of The Bachelor.
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that a bad thing?
We're like, that bitch, I don't know what he sees in her. We're gonna shove her in this fountain.
I do everything in my power to come up with at least one frustrating NPC. every 4 sessions or so. And not someone that is going to be necessarily confrontational, but is going to make you jump through hoops in order to get what you want. Most of my NPCs are helpful because that's what they're enemies, or they're helpful. They land on the good or evil. But every once in a while, I'll get a self-serving NPC. My favorite one right now is Camion, which I've spoken about a couple times in the past, and he was an imp. And he was just always there to help for a price. And the price was always legitimate. And if you could outthink him, he would honor the agreement. So this wasn't like a monkey's paw kind of situation where you would say, help us get out of the canyon, and then he would help you by killing you and dragging your bodies out. Like, it wasn't one of those. He would legitimately help you, but for a price. And if you didn't pay it, that's okay. He'll get his money's worth. And if he's not going to get it in money, he is going to get it in souls. And so he was just consistently in the background killing NPCs. And he's been in like 5 campaigns. It has taken my players a long time to figure out that some NPCs just go missing and are never heard from again. And because they don't keep accurate notes, they're not certain which. So over the course of 5 campaigns, which are all linked in the same world, Camion has racked up exactly 100 kills. And on the 100th kill, he got to rank up to go from an imp to the next level of devil. And so my players love to hate Camion. Also, he's a familiar of one of the warlocks in one of the campaigns. So that's also an issue for them.
Is it an issue?
Well, she can't get rid of him, no matter how hard she tries.
So it's an unwanted familiar?
Yes. Incredibly helpful, and will save her bacon on a regular basis, but did just murder one of the kings of the levels of hell, and super power up, and now he's like a CR20 creature, so all of his scheming and plotting has paid off.
Well, the king probably deserved it.
Yeah.
Well, he has an army, and they're going to invade the world somewhere around level 16. And the players don't know it yet.
Key word in that sentence. Yet.
Yep. Also, none of my players actually listen to the podcast anymore because they are all too busy. And this means that I can give my little trade secrets and not have to be coy and demure about it. So
see, I can't do that.
Record this 6 months in advance. So if Dave, Megan, Dan, or Casey, or Mieka are listening to this, fuck you. Here comes Camion.
Excellent. Very good. Okay, before we get any deeper into our discussion on Topaz Dragons, let's cut to an ad break.
We've previously covered quite a bit in our discussion on Dragons in 5th edition. For all of those episodes and more, you can follow or subscribe at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and dozens of other podcast apps. And if you'd like to support us, you can donate through the website, check out our store, or join our Patreon and get access to other episodes and series. If you'd like to pay for some ad space on It's a Mimic, or just send a shout out to a friend, please reach out to us through our email and website that are listed in the show notes below.
Before we get into what's being offered on our Patreon this week, I just want to say thank you to Jerlyn, who is our newest patron and has offered us pizza, but it's only Little Caesars. This week on the It's a Mimic Patreon, I sit down with the only It's a Mimic host who has actually run through the Tomb of Annihilation to cover that campaign in a Legend Lore episode where we get into the nitty-gritties of it. It's largely considered to be one of the better adventures out there and is good enough to have a number of tie-in PDFs that were published back in 2017. But in today's landscape, is it worth your money and your time, and is it up to our high standards? If you'd like to check out our Patreon, the link is in the show notes below. Anyway, let's get back to the episode.
So as we begin our discussion on Topaz Dragons, let's look at what Fizban himself has to say in the quotes we find in the book. The first one says, "A Topaz Dragon named Blustertail once complained to me that he hated water because it talked too much," whatever that means. I'm still perplexed about that one too. The second one that we see in there says, "Sometimes the evening sun catches the Topaz Dragon just right, and I forget whom I'm talking to, thinking it's my dear Sardior returned to me at last." I love that quote, because it's not just mushy-gushy. It's not just absent-mindedness of Fizban. If we look at who Sardior is, it's the first gem-born dragon.
Is Sardior actually? I don't think Sardior is actually a gem dragon.
Well,
I think just he's he, she, they. Remember, there's no gender assigned to this one. This is just the only neutral dragon. And
True, yeah.
and it's really 5th edition is coy about its lore, right?
Yeah.
And as much as we have Bahamut and Tiamat and Sardior as the first 3, Fizban is clearly Bahamut.
So I love this tie into that.
Yeah, we're just not supposed to acknowledge that, right? So so like this is what, one of his siblings who's gone missing for eons. So I don't think this is a romantic my beloved. I think this is a
memory faded in the past.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Yeah, normally these quotes we don't get like really a look into Fizban himself. They're more just like whimsy about the dragon. So I think this gives us a little peek into him.
Which is totally amazing. I want more of that. I want more of that. So let's talk about the actual Topaz Dragons themselves. Due to the necrotic energy from the negative plane that's coursing through them, Topaz Dragons themselves are a natural embodiment of decay and despair. Now, this idea of the negative plane, we talked briefly about it in our Crystal Dragons episode 203. We talked about the positive plane and the negative plane being the opposite. And it's not an actual plane that you can visit, but more so it's where the powers come from. That is anything negative, for example, raising the dead, or anything that is causing necrotic damage. It comes from the negative plane. But again, 5th edition, next to nothing on it. You'd have to dig deep into 3.5 and even earlier just to even find any information on these things. But just to get an idea of what we mean when we say the negative plane. Now, due to their psionic powers drawn from this negative plane, they exude from their very being the idea of entropy, the idea that everything will eventually die and decompose. As such, they often come across as a morbid curmudgeon of a dragon. I can just see like a wrinkled old man dragon just. But if we look at what they actually look like, at the Wyrmling stage, the scales have this pale orangish yellow hue to them, and it's kind of dull, cloudy looking. As they grow older, the scales become more translucent, seeming almost to have many layers to them, and that cloudiness of the scales begins to clarify. As for the shape of them, they are wider at the haunch, which means for bards who are drawn to larger posteriors and cannot tell a fib.
There's a little junk in the badonkadonk.
Yeah.
But they taper down the closer to the head that you get, similar to a wedge shape if you were to look at them from above, or more often than not, if you're looking from below. Now, one unique feature about them are their wings, because they're designed in such a way that it more so propels them forward as they fly, as well as when they're swimming. How this actually looks, as a DM, I would want to flavor that and what that actually looks like, both in the water and in the air, and I would make it different than other dragons.
Their wings almost look backwards in shape.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I definitely noticed that when I was looking at them, because I painted a lot of wings, so like the spines and stuff on them, I was like, those are backwards.
Well, it makes me think that they're more predatory, right? Because when you look at how eagles and hawks and whatnot dive, they very much have the wings pointed forward, as opposed to things like starlings and sparrows and stuff. Their wings kind of point backwards. So I feel like these guys are, just based on their design, really good hunters. Also, their tail's super long, hey? We had 2 tails for the crystal dragon, and then this really long one for the topaz. I wonder if weird tails and wings and shit is a consistent thing throughout the gem dragons.
Maybe
Also,
we'll find a tail on that. So
What's that?
Does it have Yoda ears? I'm looking at the picture on page 223 of Fizban's, and it looks like he has Yoda ears.
They're sort of like fins, which I imagine has something to do with the swimming and aquatic.
Yeah,
like they almost look like little fins coming off of their heads.
Yeah, I would almost want to say it looks like gremlin ears almost.
Mhm.
It's also interesting that Fizzban says that this is, he gets them confused with Sardior himself. So are these ones that look the most like what Sardior would look like then?
It's very possible, but he says it's more so in the gleam of their spines, like when he just kind of gets lost in the gaze. So maybe, I don't know.
Well, we've all been lost in some gaze at one point or another.
This is true. Something to watch out for with these guys are the gem spines that do run from the ridge from tip to tail along the dragon, as we were just talking about, because this is where they concentrate their negative psionic powers from. And they kind of just float above them, dancing and moving depending on the dragon's mood. I like that flavor that they're just kind of floating there. They're not necessarily attached, but I wonder if you can remove them.
I do love it specifies the spines hover above a living Topaz Dragon. So that makes me
Yes.
curious what happens when they die. Do they just fall? Do they detach completely and just fall to the ground?
Or do they disintegrate? Or
Mm-hmm.
because that's kind of their whole deal is they like to make things disintegrate
That's true. They could just
into
crumble.
nothingness.
Yeah.
I like the moment of the dragon finally dies, and you hear the almost like wind chimes as all of these gems hit the ground, and maybe some of them even crack and shatter. But like, I bet it rings beautifully.
Yeah.
That now I want to know what that sounds like.
Beautiful death toll.
I'm just right now trying to find. I'm going through the book, and I'm looking at what some of the other dragons look like as far as these spines go. The Great Worm has one, of course. The gemstone, the super gemstone has stuff that floats, but it looks like the emerald does as well. I know the crystal did, right? So, like, I think this is a general theme. I'm not sure if the sapphire or the amethyst do.
The
But
sapphire doesn't have like spines that float, but it does have little bits that float off of like its face and its horns and its tail.
okay, even the draconic shard in the book has little floating pieces. That was based on gem dragons, clearly. So
I do believe the amethyst also has floating.
I think that is a matching theme, like almost this ethereal kind of feel to them.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find a picture of the amethyst. There's
Yes,
so few.
it does. It has big ones that
Oh
float
yeah,
off.
there you go. There's some big hefty shards on that there beast.
Yeah.
don't get excited there, Adam.
I'm gonna get lost in the gaze.
So with these guys, while they're not necessarily malicious like the distant black dragon cousins, they are the embodiment of decay. To them, destruction is a natural course of action to make way for new creation as the decomposed materials add to the soil to encourage better growth for the future. And this is why they use their powers to turn what is already dead and diseased into dust to make way for the new creation to come through. I like that a lot.
Sorry, did you say you don't like that?
I do. I like
Oh,
this a lot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. These guys must be a blast at a party, hey? These guys in the freaking circle of spore druids. Fuck.
Yeah. I
Uh,
did see at some point in the book it said something about them not getting along with druids because of that, which I
Yes.
disagree with because there are the circle of spores, there's the circle of fire, and that's their whole thing is like the circle of fire. It's the burning to create new.
Yeah, the wildfire. There's also going to be circle of land swamp as
Mhm.
well, which would, kind of tie into this in some ways.
Yeah,
So-
and druids are very neutral when it comes to nature and they understand the life and death working together. So I disagreed very much with that passage. I can't remember exactly where it was, but
I like that, but I mean, it's looking at the same way that every time that a rogue is mentioned, you're assuming thief or assassin. Anytime a druid is
Mhm.
mentioned, you assume, tree hugging hippie, right?
Mhm.
wait a minute. They're not all of those?
No,
no,
they are
I've-
not.
I have
Um,
never played a tree hugging hippie druid, and I've played quite a few.
I've never seen one in any of my games. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite characters of all time was Terry's evil druid.
Mhm.
He was an evil black dragonborn druid who was just cowardly, and whoever was strongest in any given moment was the person that he would back. So his allegiances were consistently shifting. He reminded me a lot of Starscream from Transformers.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
okay,
sounds
yeah.
like a very Terry character.
I also like the phrase "very Terry." I hope we
Very
have a very
Terry.
Terry Christmas.
I don't.
Oh, what would that look like?
So
Just
here's
everybody crying.
fun fact about these guys, because we mentioned already their wings help them propel them forward both in the sky and while they're swimming. They hate water, even though they're natural swimmers and they usually live on seashores or brackish marshes. They absolutely have a complete disdain for the water. Coincidentally, their favorite food comes from the water as a giant squid. But it's good. It's okay because this gives them ample opportunity to express their disdain for water as they are dripping wet with the squid in their mouths. So good on them. They're just creating a time to
I
express.
loved that about them. Like,
Yeah.
that's my favorite fact. I've been telling everybody.
I'm wet. Get it off of me. Now, they're usually at odds with bronze dragons as they compete for territory on the coastlines because bronze dragons also like the coast. I'm curious, though, do you think they also compete with black dragons? Because black dragons like to be in swamps, and these guys also kind of like to be on the edge of swamps where salt and fresh water meet. So I'm wondering, do you think they compete with black dragons at all?
I mean, yes, they're going to compete with just about every dragon that they run across. I mean, I can see them running up against. See, I don't like the idea of coast. Coast to me is bullshit because I live in British Columbia where we have a rainforest on the coast here. There are, deserts that meet coasts. There are swamp areas. There are fjords. There's Arctic coasts. So the idea of coast is just garbage. That's just like where the land ends and the water begins. I wish it was just water based. Be much clearer because I could see them if they're just they're coast, fine. Do they run into white dragons, right? Like up north. So yes, I can see these guys kind of facing off against just about anybody. But I think that their antisocial nature was going to keep them from direct conflict.
True.
Yeah, they're
True.
not going to purposefully, I think, look out for any other dragon to come in contact with.
No, it's true. More, I would say any other people in general.
Yeah, any other creature.
Because you did mention earlier, Peps, that they also tend to make enemies with not just dragons, but with druids. We were just talking about that. But I would say anything that likes to protect nature. So not just druids in general, but just anyone who feels that they are a protector of nature. And that's okay because those guys are just ignorant. They don't have the long view of life like a Topaz Dragon does. Come on, guys. Get your act together. And lastly, with these guys, they tend to be solitary creatures and dislike having people around at all. But if you're able to put up with their morbid interests that they have in the entropic observations, then you're going to have a long ally and a friend to call upon. So as we talk about these Topaz Dragons, how do we make one in our campaigns? Well, let's talk a little bit about these guys. There's a lot you can do with them. We've already come up with some ideas, but when we're creating a Topaz Dragon, we want to keep in mind this idea that they don't like people and they love the idea of destruction and decay, and not from a malicious standpoint, but from just let's clear the landscape and clear kind of a fresh canvas. So make sure to definitely keep that in mind when you're making one. There's a couple personality traits that you can go from the Fizzband's book. I've taken 2 out here. It takes true artistry to maintain a warm, desert-like dwelling under the water. And the second one I got is I soothe myself to sleep by imagining the perfect insults for bronze dragons. While I wait to meet one, I hone them on other creatures. So I love that it kind of gives these two give 2 different aspects of dragons: their dislike for water and their dislike for bronze dragons.
And everything else.
And everything else. Kind of gives you a good idea of them. As for spells that we're going to be looking at with these guys, you have Bane, which is the opposite of Blessing. You have Control Water, which is self-explanatory. Create and Destroy Water, also quite self-explanatory. And the last one is Anti-Life Shell, which is essentially the Don't Touch Me bubble. I could easily see them like casting this, an ancient dragon casting this and being like, don't touch me. As we go for adventures, let's look at some of the adventures that we have in the book. It's a D8 table, And here's a couple of them. A pirate ship is found floating on the open sea, the bodies of the crew completely desiccated. The only clue of what happened is a single Topaz Dragon scale on the deck. And the second one I grabbed on there was a Topaz Dragon is injured and stranded far from the sea, but the dragon is too proud to ask for help getting home. I like that these guys can be used wherever. Sure, they're mostly going to be used around the sea and the coast, looks like where the water meets the land, just for you, Adam. But they can be used anywhere, and wherever they are is going to change the dynamic of who they are.
Yeah, you could almost put those two together and like be different clues in the same adventure.
Oh, it's so true. As for the layers, let's talk about them a little bit, because we've already discussed how coastline is kind of a generic term which should be used where the water meets the land. And that's where these guys like to be. Either that or where fresh water meets salt water. They just love to see it consistently going against each other. So which is why they like to kind of be in these brackish marshes. But on that note, they also love to bask in the sun beside the water, even though they despise getting wet other than a bit of sea spray in the air. Oh, I got some water on me. Dry it off, quick. But they love watching the water a lot more than being in it. But because of their constant kind of bickering with bronze dragons and other things competing for the same land, they change at least more frequently than other dragons. When some dragons find a place, they stay there for, well, an eon, so to speak. Whereas these dragons do change a little bit more because they don't want to compete, and also they just want better views. They want to have a better view of the sun wherever they are at. So their lairs don't look as finished as some of the other dragons' lairs. But I can tell you this about these guys. Topaz dragons are interior decorators. I am 100% sure of this because they use mirrors. They use many different shades of fabric, gold and yellow, and other objects that kind of go well with the spines to decorate their digs. And they do it in such a way to bring in more light. And I can easily imagine these guys putting a tapestry on one side. Oh, no, I can't go there. It needs to go on the right-hand side, a bit on the upper side, and then the other wall, we're going to put it on the left-hand side. We're going to create this. And those mirrors, make sure they're in the exact position to get their interior decorators. These guys have my heart right there. They are interior decorators. I love these guys.
I wonder, so they're all about, decay and desiccation and whatnot, right? And destruction over time. But I'm wondering, do they have a special love? Like, is their hoard special to them because it is items that do not deteriorate over their lifespan?
It could be.
Like the things that holds most dear. I mean, you said tapestries, and tapestries will eventually rot, especially if you're in like coastal regions and there's water and salt water and like that kind of moist air and whatnot. But like,
but their layers are dry.
Yes, their layers are dry, but like I feel like if you're bringing in the tapestry from the outside world and whatnot, right, it's going to be like that's why I really like the idea of mirrors and gems and crystals and gold and like sculptures maybe, because stone doesn't deteriorate as quickly as how some dragons will collect pets or minions, or they like growth and greenery, and these guys, I bet, like, there's not a potted plant to be seen.
If it is, it's a statue.
Yeah, it's they have plastic plants everywhere.
Those will last forever.
Then they don't have to water them too, so they don't have to worry about getting wet.
I really want to explore the idea of how these things interact with either themselves, or if there's another person in there, what kind of attitude they have. Like I would laugh hysterically if one of these guys, he had the mirrors everywhere. They love looking at themselves and how the lights play. And then suddenly he says, "Does this make my haunch look big?"
The correct answer is yes. If you say no, it's big trouble.
Exactly. But speaking of the hordes, Adam, they love to organize their hordes to the point where it's obsessive. I actually don't think they have too much tapestries in their hordes for the reason that you said, that they do decay. So it's more so in the whole decorating area that they have, but not the horde in and of itself. It's just the main hall has all these tapestries and everything in there. And I think that, yeah, it's just going to be more so just things that don't fade away with time in their hordes. But as
I did read, they do sometimes include undead in their horde, and I thought that was a fun.
Yes, they do, and we're going to get to that in a tiny bit there of why that's the case. But let's talk about what their lair kind of looks like. At least some places we'll find, because they have an entry tunnel or a couple entry tunnels, either on a beach side or on a cliff side. They have their horde chamber, and then they have their decorated caverns. This is where they would have all those tapestries. They would have the mirrors would be everywhere, including the horde room. But I think this is where you find those tapestries. And they even have separated islands. Again, maybe it's just for other places to bask in the sun, or who knows, campaign ideas. But one thing I do love is they will sometimes even use flooded tunnels as their entrance to keep people out. Even if it means they have to get wet to get inside, they are willing to get wet for a moment to keep people out for long periods. I would imagine that on the other end, it's like a prestidigitation, or it's a destroy water on themselves. Get it off me. Get it off me.
I like the idea too that, like, well, water's the worst thing ever. Like, this is just completely uncomfortable and it's horrifying. And why would anybody want to come this way? This is a great defense because water sucks, right? Yeah. And everyone else is just like, well, like I guess my boots are wet, but like, all right, let's go, right? How are you not more bothered?
I love that. So with the actual mechanics of the lair, what they have, we know what it kind of looks like, some things we might find in there, but the actual mechanics of it that can go with the lair. We see these with the crystal dragons, this one of beguiling whisper. And it just means that anyone that the dragon can telepathically whisper to, wow, I didn't even say that right. Telepathically. There we go. That's better. Words. Yeah. But any person that has this beguiling whisper, they need to succeed on a DC 15 wisdom saving throw, or else they're going to be charmed on the next count of initiative, which is 20 usually. And they have to try and obey the command of the dragon to the best of their ability. That isn't going to be directly harmful to the creature. Again, we've seen this already. This next one, though, this is the one that just sends shivers down my spine as a DM. I'm like, oh, this is good. And that is cancellation. The dragon gets to choose an active spell of 5th level or lower that it knows of, that it's aware of, and that's in its lair, and it just ends the spell. This is your counter spell as a lair action. Holy flip. That's powerful. Get any concentration spells.
This is this has real Rakshasa vibes to it, and I love it. This is also going to drive your players up the wall. Keep in mind, this is only for adult and ancient dragons because it's lair actions. But like, so you're at least CR 13, which means they're coming in with some big powerful spells, thinking now we can finally do this, and it just gets canceled out.
Yeah, that's what I loved.
And then it wastes that spell slot, like for that player. It just spell slot gone. 5th level.
And it doesn't waste any spell slot for the dragon.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just want to see the faces of the first time it happens. And you don't tell them. You just tell them that for some reason it's just not working. Or they come in and they have, even if they're just walking in and they have a light, the cantrip light cast, and all of a sudden it goes out. What happened? And then the last thing they have for the lair actions is this one called Negative Energy Infusion. And any 2 creatures that the dragon can see, and that's in their lair, need to succeed on a DC 15 con save, or they're going to take 4d6 necrotic damage. If they fail, what happens is this negative energy from, let's say, the negative plane kind of infuses this whole place. And while it's there, the creature can't regain hit points. Imagine that. You're DC 13, you get hit by something, get the cleric, cast heal, get the paladin with lay on hands, anything. It's not working. Can't heal. That's a little scary.
And again, uses another spell slot that they can't get back.
Exactly. So we've talked about the lair itself. Let's talk a little bit about the regional effects that we see here. They have crystal profusions, which we've seen with the crystal dragon as well. But these ones, as they grow more underground. So it's very interesting. It's if you're kind of even underground in a tunnel nearby, you'll see these crystals kind of growing, both stalagmites, stalactites, so whatever you want to call, whichever one. And you'll see them more and more often the closer you get. There's also this negative energy. And what happens is when you're finishing a long rest and you're within 6 miles of the lair, you have to make a DC 15 con save. And if you fail, you don't get rid of exhaustion levels or you don't recover hit dice. This is if you're within 6 miles of this thing. Even if you don't know it's there and you suddenly go to sleep and you have a level of exhaustion, you wake up, no, it's still there. You still have disadvantage in all skill checks.
The thing that's particularly gnarly about this, too, is that even if you kill the Topaz Dragon, it takes 1d10 days for the regional effects to go away. So let's say you get in a big battle and you guys defeat it, and all of the players say, okay, that was great. Look, let's hole up in its lair and get in a long rest and then go through its horde and everything else. They may not be able to recover fully, even after the fact, right? So whatever minions or allies or anything else that it has that might be around are still a significant threat.
Exactly. So it's
they'd have to go a good 6 miles to
good
be
luck if you're
get
that tired.
rest. Yeah.
Now I wonder, is that affecting if they take a long rest? Are they still able to recover hit points? It doesn't say they don't recover hit points.
No, it's hit dice specifically, right? Because
exactly.
You would, in theory, have used a short rest or two on the way to the dragon's lair.
Yeah.
So you would have burned some hit dice. It is going to let you recover, but your next short rest is not going to be as useful as you might hope it will.
Exactly. So I love that after effect. It's not the effect of, okay, we need to take a long rest after this one. Sure, you do. And then you head out, and the next thing that comes up, and you need to take a short rest. Oh, you're not regaining as much as you thought because you don't have those hit dice.
Sorry, I'm looking up right now how far you can actually get in 6 hours according to the rules as written. So we're gonna circle back to this. I'm gonna interrupt you in a minute because it's gonna take me a sec to find this.
No, of course, that's fine. And they also have thriving wildlife. And guess what they like to attract in their lairs? Giant squid, which is an abundant food source and not the best thing for players. That's something to think about. It's, oh, sure, yeah, it's the food source, yeah. What if you're nearby and you're near the water? Guess what's going to happen to you if you get too close to one of these giant squids? That's not a random encounter. That was very on purpose.
Okay, so here's what I've got. Your distance travel. Now, I mean, this is assuming that you're not on a ship coming in from the coast, right? But that you're walking. So it has your normal speed is 24 miles per day, which means that you're moving for 8 hours at a time. You don't actually travel for the full 24. So that means that you're doing 6 miles in 2 hours. You're essentially moving 3 miles an hour, right? Which means for 2 hours worth of random encounters, you are going to be under the effect of this regional effect. However, if it's thick underbrush and you're moving like it's difficult terrain, that's at half speed. If you want to be stealthy, you can only move 18 miles, which means that's going to be 2 miles an hour. If you're moving quickly to get through this, then you're taking a -5 penalty to your wisdom score, and you are still having to walk an hour and a half under these rules. This is going to be a significant issue for people.
It is. Honestly, it is. I really like the idea of the exhaustion, even more so than just the hit dice. That if they take a long rest expecting to be rid of their exhaustion, oh no, it's still there. And they have to find someplace to sleep to get rid of that exhaustion. Oh no, you can't do it here. I find that even more scary for a player.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing they have, yes, there's more, is something called watery sight. Essentially, it's just they can use clairvoyance from any body of water within 6 miles of the lair. And again, this is part of their abilities. It is not a spell. that they have to cast. They don't use up any spell slots. This is a part of their layer, or the regional effects, I should say.
Mhm.
As for the treasures that these guys have, we talked a little bit about it already. They love gold, and they love anything that kind of goes with their scales, except bronze. They detest bronze. You'll never guess why. But they also love nautical themed items. So you could imagine having a gold sextant in there. Or they love sun-themed items, anything that reflects the sun, and mirrors of all sorts all throughout it. This is the light source. They have natural light coming in, bouncing off these mirrors, and it's just lights up the whole cabin. I think, was it in The Mummy, I think? When they entered into the cabin and they adjusted a mirror and then the whole place lit up?
It's Indiana Jones.
Is it Indiana Jones?
They did that in The Mummy too, but they definitely did that in one of the Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I was one of the two, but it's that same idea that they love using mirrors to light up everything, which I think is a really cool light source, so to speak. But they love playing with the light in their layers and the different kinds of the shine that the light brings off of whatever surfaces that it's on, and they love experimenting. Again, they are a little enthusiastic, I want to say, in their hordes about what they can do, and they are a little OD, just like, no, this needs to be exactly right. It needs to be right there. That's right.
Oh, you mean they're OCD about it?
Yep, completely. Thank you. My brain had a brain fart.
Yeah, I have an interesting thought. So they love nautical themed items, and they're on the coast. They don't like getting wet. That annoys me, right? That the fact that they're not, this doesn't line up as cleanly as some of the other dragon environments are, right? You're like, oh yeah, they could have like golden sextants, and they can have, special spy glasses, and maybe even a famous ship, because these guys have a swim speed, right? They don't breathe underwater, but they're fast. They can get down and like lift up nearby shipwrecks and pull them back to their areas. And I wonder if the reason
they
that
actually are amphibious. They can breathe underwater.
Can they? Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know why I thought they couldn't, but so I like the idea of them rescuing these bits and pieces, these treasures from underwater. And I'm wondering, maybe they like the coast because of the way that the water and the waves corrode the land away.
It very well could be. Or even the idea of how the sun shines off the water.
It's
Yeah,
like
because
the water being a big mirror for the sun.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, some of the worst sunburns I've ever had were when I was on the water. But no, I really like the idea of them, like, they're big picture, right? All gem dragons are fairly big picture as well. So the idea of the world, in the end, everything dies. I mean, Jesus, that's bleak. Fuck, that reminds me of fucking high school poetry.
But you have to think of the other side of it too. They clear it away for the purpose of new creation, which you could imagine for a Topaz Dragon, if it is just basking on the seashore, waiting for the sunrise. And when it sees the sunrise, to them, it's like a new creation.
Do you think that they don't like getting wet? Like, there's a difference between being submerged in a pool and then standing on the edge of the pool when you're like shivering and cold. Like, do you think they don't mind being underwater, but the moment they like burst free and they're dripping, like, towel, fuck,
yes.
towel.
Yeah.
That's my kids.
I like just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to like it, Like, you could be good at so many things that you fucking hate. And I feel like that's a big personality, trait of theirs, is like, just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I like it, but I'll do it if I have to, but I'm gonna complain.
I make macaroni for my kids. I'm good at it, but it doesn't mean I like it.
Yeah. I make very good pickles. I cannot fucking stand pickles. Like, can't stand them.
Thank you, Peps.
But
Thank you.
I make amazing pickles, so I've been told. Won't eat them.
You got a weird palate, Peps. You don't like mustard, you don't like pickles, and I don't know what to do with you.
I don't like vinegary things.
Is it just ketchup on your hot dogs then?
We in Ohio put chili sauce on our hot dogs. It's chili cheese dogs. So chili with no beans, cheese, onions. Most people put mustard, but I do not.
Yeah, no, I'm all over. Like chili cheese dogs are great. Why no beans?
That's just the chili sauce on hot dogs here. There's no beans in it. It's just meat and sauce and flavor.
I feel like you live in like Oz, right? It's Alice in Wonderland down there, where everything is familiar, but it's not quite right.
Yeah. We also put that on spaghetti noodles.
Yes, I do that too.
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to it now. As much as they love doing all these things, as OCD as they are about their horde, they will never show it to anyone else. So they get it picture perfect, the most amazing and beautiful thing that they could ever do. And they will never show anyone else. Even if you're friends with them, even if you have made an ally of them, they are very unlikely to ever show you it.
Do you think that's because of all of the damn mirrors and they're antisocial? So when you walk into the room full of mirrors, there's now 1,000 of you, and that would drive it up the fucking wall.
It
That's
might.
possible, yeah.
It could also be that don't touch that. Don't touch that with that. No, I spent 100 years finding the exact location for that. No, you don't touch it.
Between the rogue stealing it and the bard humping it and the barbarian knocking it over, like there's no good way. Like only the wizard and monk are allowed in here, and hands in your pockets.
Yes. And you are only at the doorway. You're only looking in. You're not going in.
Monks might even be tricky because they could try to run up it, and then you got footprints way up on the ceiling you gotta fucking deal with.
Now, can you imagine the druid just like tracking in mud?
No, even worse, tracking in water.
Just puddles of water, just dripping.
But they do have other treasures outside of material things really quickly here, because they also treasure information regarding anything about destruction and creation. So keep in mind, they're not all about just decay. They also love creation. A particular interest, though, of theirs is anything that manipulates things outside of the ordinary when it comes to these ideas of destruction and creation. For example, making something from nothing or raising an undead. This to them is just, is this new life? Is that what this is? This is interesting, curious. And anything that's using powers from the negative planes, they're just curious. They don't celebrate the undead and worship it. No, by no means. But they are very curious to the point where they will sometimes keep undead in their hordes, as you said. I would imagine it had to be pretty rare creatures because they know of undead. But it's the idea of, what if it's a rare creature that's an undead? They might keep that in there. Who knows? It could also be the guard dog, so to speak.
Yeah, I could see these ones like especially trying to go Draco Lich, like becoming that, or even just like trying to get a Draco Lich in there.
Well,
I think how do I build a room to keep this thing?
I think the difference. I think they're going to go Shadow Dragon because Draco Liches are all about the like immortal power that wizards and liches want, right? But a Shadow Dragon is literally infused with negative energy. It's one of the only other places that we see this kind of like real reliance on the negative plane when it comes to dragons. So like I feel like that one makes a lot of sense. And they would go after the Shadowfell because people are muted and standoffish, and like I think that's a really good fit.
I think what it would be is they'd become a Shadow Dragon and keep a Draco Lich in their horde.
Yeah.
Oh well, that's just gonna piss off the Draco Lich. So
even better.
So yeah, do that.
Do that.
It likes to piss off other dragons.
It's true, it does. Especially if it's a bronze Draco Lich.
Yes. So let's roll some dice, guys, and I got a few questions for you regarding these guys. So let's roll some dice. 19.
Also 19.
I got a 14. I'm going last. It's bullshit.
Peps, let's roll off. 10.
11.
Jeez. Well, Peps, the Dragon Queen, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Before we jump into these mechanics, how do you feel about the lore surrounding these dragons?
I really enjoyed the lore of these dragons. They're very unique feeling. I found a lot of joy in they're very good at swimming but hate being wet aspect to them, because you don't see that. Like there's so many that just like, yeah, that all tracks, that all makes sense, but they have this like weird quirk that I really enjoyed seeing, because that's life and that's people. And just like I said, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to enjoy it,
No, it's true. Absolutely, I agree. I love the lore of these dragons in the sense that it leaves room for the DM to really play with it. It leaves room for them to build this dragon how they want it to be, whether they want to focus on the decay aspect of it or just the aspect of, I don't like people, get away from me. So it leaves that room. I love that with this lore.
I like the lore of this well enough. Honestly, I'm going to use about 15 other dragons before I get around to the Topaz. It's not that this is bad, it's that hermits are, a dime a dozen, like especially in D&D. You got to go off and go quest to find the person that doesn't want to be found, right? And that's fairly consistent as a plot hook. And I would use a Topaz Dragon to mix it up every once in a while. But I can't really come up with a solid reason to go fight this guy at high levels. Again, this doesn't feel like a combat dragon to me.
No, you have to have the right setting for it. You have to have the purpose of it. It's not just it randomly appears. You need to have a reason for it.
Yeah, it was the same with the crystal dragon, right? Like, I feel like blue dragons and green dragons and gold dragons and brass dragons, like, they're all involved in humanity and they're all dicking about. And like, you're going to run into these guys over and over and over again. The gem dragons feel two steps removed. They're more rare and they're more difficult to come across. And I don't mean like, yes, there's rarity, but they're also steering clear of big civilization and stuff as well.
No, it's true. Absolutely.
It's an interesting stat block. I do quite like the layers. I think it's neat. I'm going to have to really build a section of a campaign to go find a Topaz Dragon, right? Whereas I feel like I could slam all of the metallic and chromatic, as well as, drakes and wyverns and hydras. I could slam all that into a campaign. But if I'm doing gem dragons, this is a gem dragon campaign. These 3 levels are Topaz dragons. The next 3 levels are sapphire dragons, right? And like, because there's a lot about them, so and it's all very specific. A lot of room to play in, but very specific as far as their weird attitudes about shit, right?
Yeah, I could see it there being confrontations between dragons. Like you could see a bronze dragon and a topaz dragon going at it from a distance type thing.
Yeah, but like, I feel that the easier window into that conflict is through the bronze dragon side. The Topaz dragon is just over there doing their shit. You don't really explore so much as you go in to fight on behalf of the bronze dragon, right? And again, they don't feel like combatants, so it seems, I don't know, it seems odd.
It is a little. What do you guys think of the spells, though? Did you find that they're a little lacking, or did you find it fit?
I think my favorite one that they get is the create destroy water, because I definitely see them just destroying the water on them to get dry. Like that's how they're using that spell. I did notice with the crystal dragon, they had spells that they could do at will, and I did not see that here.
No, it's true. They don't. Yeah, they don't have at will spells.
Yes, so I found that interesting that there was that. They get like less spells that they can use.
Yeah, and when you were mentioning the whole idea of create, destroy water to get the water off themselves,
they can do it once,
just once a day. That's it.
But is that also how they're like drying out their layer too? Because it says they meticulously will dry their layer. So I think they're sort of reserving that to make sure their layer is very dry. Like there's a puddle, I got to get rid of it.
I think you're right there. That's what their focus is on with that spell, or even just moving the water, because they can shape water, so they're just shaping it away. Either that, or I could definitely see them as using this to get into their lair. If they have like this flooded tunnel, they're using shape water and doing a whole Moses thing of just splitting the water, going through. Okay, I didn't get wet. I do like the anti-life shell spell. It does kind of fit them, because anti-life shell allows undead to come in. So they're comfortable around their undead, but not around people.
Because undead don't talk as much.
Yeah, it's true. You hear,
but also I feel like they would have to have their own like section in their horde for their undead ones, or they're just bumping into shit.
You mean like bumping uglies?
Like, yeah, like the undead, they're just like knocking over their very meticulously put things. So I think they'd have to have a whole separate section of their horde area.
Well, okay, that brings me to an interesting point, though. Is everybody, sees the word undead and they think zombie, but I was like, I feel like they're just in their lair is full of ghosts.
Yeah, it could very well be. Yeah, they don't
Right?
touch anything.
The idea of shadows in the mirrors, like the literal shadows, in the mirrors, or like specters floating around, because there's another alternate rule set for specters. You can get poltergeists, right? So they're invisible and they just interact with the space. And as long as the Topaz Dragon can keep them under control to some degree, that'd be neat. That'd be interesting to see. And not every undead is mindless. Like, we always think zombie and skeleton, but you get a skull lord or a wight or something like that, a death knight that cohabitates this space. That makes a lot of sense, and that's really interesting.
It does, but I also find that it contradicts the idea that they don't want to be disrupted. If they're being OCD in their horde and organizing it consistently, they don't want people talking to them.
Yeah, but I think that, okay, so here's where I'm coming from with this. If you've got some sort of sunken, like, I'm thinking on the coast, there was an earthquake, a typhoon, something, and a castle ended up sinking down into the sands, and there's a large cavern there, and a death knight is just there brooding angrily, radiating like necrotic energy and just being a negative presence. Topaz Dragon might move into the cavern and never step foot in the castle.
Okay, fair enough. That's absolutely...
It is interesting that they keep them as part of their horde and not just their minions, though. And how do you, like, the horde is supposed to be quantifiable as to how much power they get. Like, we've learned that in past episodes, where after they reach this certain value, they can move on age-wise. Like, how do you put a value on undead for their horde?
I would look at how much, like, there are some general rules about when you kill a creature, how much loot that it would drop, how much experience that you would get. This is kind of where I would look at what's the CR of this creature. And I would extrapolate the math from there. I like Anti-Life Shell as far as the spell goes. It doesn't wow me because they get it so damn late.
I know.
Dragon, CR 20, which means you're not seeing this till the very end of the campaign, and it's a level 5 spell, and it works for 10-foot radius. Right? At that point, everybody has enough range that who gives a shit. And even the party members that don't traditionally rely on ranged weapons will still 10 feet is enough to throw an axe, right, or a knife or whatever. So the Anti-Life Shell is neat. I wish they got it as young dragons. I think that would be
I agree.
I found that with a few of them, like we had mentioned invisibility with the crystal. Like, it comes too late. It's a really cool spell that they get, but too late.
I'm really going to I'm going to lean into boosting the spell casting for this kind of dragon. It is worth pointing out that they also do get fabricate the spell, right? Which is neat. Again, they only cast it once per day. I don't know why it's not on the spell list, why it's a special thing that they can do, and I guess that's just because they can all do it. Can the youngs?
The Wyrmlings can't.
No, I believe it comes in at adult. So
again, like, it's coming in late. The CR 13 is not too bad, but it feels like it's coming in late. And it's never going to come up in battle.
No, it's purely a flavor thing outside of battle, I think.
Yeah, converting raw materials to products of the same material. I mean, unless you have like a stone floor that the players are walking across, and you can fabricate it into being stone shoes. Like, now it's a statue, like it's I don't know. Like, there's going to be some creative ways to go about this, but I can't imagine. One of the examples in the spell is you can make clothes from flax or wool once a day. Who gives a fuck for a Topaz Dragon? Like, it's neat, but it's a 4th level spell for a reason, and it's weird that they gotta wait to level 13. I don't know. I would like to see more interesting combat level shit. Make them more paranoid, make them more persnickety about shit and not want people around. Anti-life shell, go 10 feet away from me in my lair feels weird, right? Like it should be banishment. That feels better.
Yeah, or it should be that the spell radius of anti-life shell would be, let's say, 150 feet.
Yeah, but just for them, right? Like
Yeah.
it should be shit like that. Again, Bane, super low powered. By the time that your CR20 creature shows up, who gives a damn? It's a D4, right?
Well,
like,
Bane they get as a Wyrmling.
sure, but it's relatively useless in tiers 3 and 4.
Yeah, it is.
Like especially because it can only do it once a day.
That's what I don't like.
And control water and create and destroy water. All right. I don't care. They're not around water. Who cares? Right? So I don't know. These spells leave something
They do lack.
Mm-hmm.
It seems as if it's not for combat whatsoever. It does feel that it is mostly for social or exploration.
This feels like someone sat down and looked at what can we do to make more unique personalities for dragons besides the basic 10 that we started with, and then what spells will support that. And they're not thinking about gameplay. This was all design decisions.
Yeah, flavor-wise, they make sense, but
Sure, yeah, they're great for flavor.
yeah,
But again,
how are you actually going to use them?
yeah, who gives a shit, right?
So I think we've talked a little bit about the layers and the regional effects already. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that? Perhaps?
I mean, I think their layers, they make sense, I guess, with the way that they meticulously put together their hordes and that, but it's just for them. Unlike other dragons, there's nothing you can do that you're gonna see their horde unless you're like sneaking in and trying to. Like they're not gonna show it off. And I like that. Some people just have their things that's for them, and that's okay. And they don't need to show it off. Regional effects are usually my favorite with any of them. I like the flavor that they add. I think it's funny that this one, it's only the giant squid that they're attracting. Like other ones, it's all animals, in the area flourish. And this one, it's just the one that I want comes here.
That's so odd to me. Like,
yeah.
Why? And why specifically this?
They're very quirky.
Odd,
they're so quirky and like weird. And I think that's what I like about them, is that they're just weird.
I would have to agree. That's what I like about it, is it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It absolutely doesn't.
It's self-serving.
Fun.
Like it's all very self-serving. They do not care about anybody else around them. I want giant squid, so I'm going to attract giant squid.
Yeah, I don't know. Sure, why not?
I feel that the layers, the layer just kind of says to people, I want to look at me, I want to look good, but I'm the only one who wants to know it.
Yeah.
And
they do very much care what they look like, but they don't care that anybody else cares. They just want to look good for themselves.
Yeah, I do like this idea of cancellation. I really, really like that, because at a level 13, when you're facing this, or even later, you don't see that coming. And then suddenly once they do find out, if they do, they have to change their complete strategy. And to see, I'm sorry, should I feel bad when I say that I enjoy seeing my players struggle with that they have to think outside the box?
Yeah, the layer actions, I agree with you. The layer actions are interesting. In my opinion, the layer actions are the most interesting thing about these dragons.
Yeah.
Because this is all the combat, right? All of this is such solid combat. You're going to split the party with Beguiling Whisper. You're going to shut down your spellcasters, and you're going to take away their ability to heal, right? And then it kind of rotates. And I don't necessarily tell my players what the layer action is if there's no visual component to it. So, for example, cancellation, suddenly your thing just fails because it doesn't have to be within sight. The Topaz Dragon's aware of the fact that you are casting Pass Without Trace because it has this this clairvoyance that from the
see.
watery sight, right?
Mhm.
So like it knows what you guys are doing. It knows you're casting this and you're trying to sneak in. So all of a sudden it just fails. You don't know why. It just did, right?
Exactly.
And it's more dangerous. It's sneakier. It's more fun. As far
Players
as
don't necessarily want to hear the spell they're casting. They want to see what it looks like.
yeah, and when it comes to the regional effects, like they're good. I don't like the giant squid thing. It feels like a bizarre add-on. I wonder if there's something in previous editions, which this is a holdover from, because I can't figure out why else they would do this. I do like the watery sight because clairvoyance gives us another spell, so their spell list of 4 is really 6 at this point. But it's a level 3 spell at CR 13 and up. Again, I'm not overwhelmed by this.
That negative energy, though, or the negative, what was it called?
Yeah, negative energy where they're unable to reduce the levels of exhaustion or regain hit dice. DC 15 con save, though. The ones that are getting exhaustion at that level are going to be your barbarian,
Which
right?
have a wicked con.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So, and they're going to be your frontline fighters. So I don't think this is as effective as you may think, because your back row fighters are not the ones that are suffering from exhaustion or like using a shit ton of hit dice in the first place. So again, it's neat. It's cool. I like it when it's stacked with other things, but I don't know. The Topaz Dragon is leaving me a little, it feels lopsided.
What do you think their eggs would look like?
I think these ones are like the Fabergé eggs. They're very like gold and shiny and intricate and perfect. Like they have everything else in there. Like it's almost reflectively shiny.
I go from the aspect of it's going to be part of their hoard. It looks like everything in their hoard. It is, as I said, it's shiny. It's beautiful. It is the prize center of their hoard. And all the lights kind of are glinting off of it that they have in there.
What if it was just one big mirror surface all the way around?
Ooh.
And that's kind of why they like mirrors and reflections and whatnot, is because that's the first thing that they are aware of when they hatch.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
So you could go that way, or you could go the necrotic energy way of it also. And it's crumbly and desiccating. And
what if it is a mirror surface, but as you approach it, every step closer that you get to it, the older you look, and then by the time that you touch it, you look like a withered old skeleton.
Because of death and decay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean it's just a visual effect, but it's one of those defense mechanisms that they just naturally have so that things don't touch their eggs.
Yeah, I like that. I like combining the two. Like from a distance, it looks very beautiful, and the closer you get, like
It just
worse
looks more
gets.
creepy.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, the flavor of these dragons and their lairs is an interesting thought for DMs to play with, I think. But what about the dragon stats themselves? So as we look at the Topaz Wyrmlings, you can look at their connections table. It's a D6. I've just taken a couple out of there. One is a mated pair of griffins found a Topaz dragon egg and they care for it as if it was their own. Or a pirate crew keeps a curmudgeonly Topaz Dragon Wyrmling as a beloved mascot. Doesn't like water, ain't going to go off the ship. As for its stat block, the size and alignment of this thing, it is a medium dragon. So it's still decent in size, but it's chaotic neutral and the CR 2. And it speaks Draconic and has telepathy up to 120 feet. As for the AC of these things, it is 16, so it's decently high for level 2. A level 2 party having to get past a 16 AC, but they average about 33 hit points, so they're not a heaping heavy amount. Now, these things have a 30-foot movement, standard, a 60-foot fly, again, not too uncommon, and a 30-foot swim. Keep in mind, these things can swim just as fast as they can walk because of those wings that they have that propel them forward, and that can prove to be a little dangerous. I'm not gonna lie.
Also, 60 feet for level 2 is nuts.
For fly?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're quick little buggers. As for the stats themselves, they're all above average, between 12 and 15, with the strength, intelligence, charisma being the higher of the ones. The saving throws, You got Dex, Con, Wiz, all at +3, and Charisma +4. Their skills, again, they have relatively high intimidation perception, a +6, +5, and a +3 in stealth. As for the resistances, again, as you can guess, it's cold and necrotic. So not that they don't shiver because they're cold. They just don't like the water. But they have blind sight up to 10 feet, dark vision 120 feet. So they can see a fair bit in the dark. And that passive perception of 15, you may not be sneaking up on these guys. As for their attacks, they just have the bite attack. So it just does minimal piercing and necrotic damage. But what's interesting is their breath. This desiccating breath. And it's this yellowish necrotic breath that just exudes out of them. And it's in a 15-foot cone. And it's a DC 11 con save, or they're going to take 6d6 necrotic damage and also be in a weakened state, meaning that all strength-based attacks are half damage and all strength saves are at disadvantage. That can be a heavy hit if you get hit by that thing. Now, mind you, it's only a DC 11 con save, but at level 2, your wizard ain't going to get past that. And they can cast Bane once a day. That's what we have for the Wyrmlings here. So let's roll initiative, guys, and let's talk about a couple things with these. So grab your dice. I got 8.
4.
I got 11.
Oh, Mr. Adam, you are first.
Yay.
So
All right, what's
my
your
question. So my question to you is, what is a quest or an adventure that would involve a Topaz Wyrmling?
Honestly, I would have a Topaz Wyrmling hire the adventurers to escort it from one coast to another. I'm going to sit in my carriage with the curtains drawn. Don't look at me. And they may not know it's a Topaz Wyrmling. Maybe it has someone, or it's able to speak, through the window. Be like, don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look at me. I will pay you a ton of money to get me from this place to this place. And yes, I understand it's a skeletal warhorse pulling my carriage. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Now, is this all in Draconic?
Yeah, absolutely. So, they're talking to the Dragonborn. Unfortunately, it's a bronze Dragonborn, so, fuck. So this guy's rude as shit, too. So
I like it. I like the idea that the party comes up and sees this Wyrmling kind of going at it against a bronze dragon Wyrmling, and just an epic fight ensuing between the two. And by epic, it's, well, not really that epic. It's 2 Wyrmlings. But they're causing destruction at the nearby village. And it's just a little bit of mayhem. Not much, but it's enough that the villagers have asked you to step in and just kind of separate the two. And I just want to see how is the party going to handle that? Are they just going to murder them both straight out and incur the wrath of something else? Or are they going to try and do something to keep them away from each other?
I like in the personality traits, there is one that says, if my offspring can't care for themselves, I'm not sure they're worthy of my attention. And I think you could really play off of that with a quest or adventure with the Wyrmling, as they clearly do not have very caring parents and they have to figure things out on their own. So they might be as shy and standoffish as they are, looking for help to prove themselves to their parents. So that might be a good in on how you would get it to interact with one.
Is this the first bad parent dragon that we've had?
No.
I can't remember which ones specifically, but no, there's some pretty bad ones.
I would imagine black dragons are not the best parents.
Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking metallic. Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Green dragons are the best parents. Absolutely.
You know that they're passive aggressive as shit.
Well, it also depends on your definition of good and bad parents, because brass dragons are going to be very helicopter parents, I feel like. So it's all perspective.
It's all in the eye of the beholder.
I have to say that the best part of this episode for me so far is that we managed to get Peps to say brass dragon again. And that's always my favorite part of every dragon episode.
Excellent. How would you guys roleplay these Topaz Wyrmlings? And what would the attitudes be?
I think that it would be an immature level of standoffishness. You ever seen a kid on a playground, like under the age of 8, just like stomping their feet? Don't look at me, I don't want to talk to anybody. Crossing their arms and just like huffing.
Mm-hmm.
You understand, Adam, I have 3 kids, all under the age of 8.
There you go. So So yes, it's very much children throwing little tantrums, but it's not.
Your kid that's missed nap time.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not. I'm going to destroy things. It's not. I'm going to make you pay. It's. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm going to go up to my room and pout, and I'm going to just be sullen. You're not running into these guys in a lair. They don't have lairs yet. They may be building it, but it's not a true lair with a true horde. So like it's fun. It's interesting to them, but it's not a sanctuary yet. So I think that they're going to feel exposed and out in the open. Maybe there's some anxiety to these guys as well, especially because they don't have it set up where they can avoid being wet all of the time. Wyrmlings still have to deal with rain, right? And you can't imagine that's a good time.
Yeah.
No.
So again, if I'm going to have them interacting with the party, they're going to need things from the party, and it's going to be begrudgingly.
Mm-hmm.
I would take these Topaz Dragons and I would make them be the proud, I don't need help kind of teenagers, preteens. No, what do you mean? No, I don't want your help. I can do it. They're the independent, I don't want help preteens. Because Wyrmlings are not always like babies and children. They can be like that kind of age too. But that's how I envision these particular guys, because they don't want to be around people. They don't want to ask for help. I can do it myself. No, and they obviously can't. That's kind of how I would role play these guys.
See, I have two kids. One will talk to you forever. One will not talk to you. I have friends that she has known her whole life. She's 10. She will not say a word to them. And that's sort of like in my head how I would do it. Like, you have to be special. You have to have something that they really want for them to even say a word, like to bless you with a word, you know. And once, like, if you earn that, it's huge. If you've ever earned the like communication with a very, very shy child, like, that's huge. They chose you for that. But that's sort of where I would go with it. Having a kid like that myself, that you have to really put in the work to even get a word out of them.
Oh yeah. So really quickly, guys, what are some clues that might cause a party to be attentive that there might be one of these things nearby? What are some clues that would be?
You're going to see a lot of dead plants. I think that it's using its breath weapon on small creatures and whatnot. Did we get into what the diet of these things are at all?
Giant squid.
Yeah, just giant squid is all.
Sure. I mean, like a wyrmling, right? Like they're not eating giant squids, right? Is that why there's a bunch of? Well, there we go. So that's why they have giant squids like that are plentiful around, because they're just going to eat them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, so they love calamari.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that. Do you think that mind flayers are a delicacy?
I think the mind flayer head is a delicacy.
Just anything with tentacles.
Yeah, I don't know. It's evidence of the breath weapon for these guys. There's not a whole bunch. They're gonna hide. You're not really gonna know one is around because they don't want you to know, right?
I would agree with that. That you're gonna see effects of the breath weapon sporadically. It's like it's testing on certain patches of ground.
Yeah.
It's not the whole plane is covered in this. No, it's just like little patches here and there. You see one plant that's vibrant, and then right beside it, this blackened stain.
And maybe a little bit of new growth coming out of it. But yeah, I would agree. It would be just the breath weapon and the little hints of that.
Yeah. So what are the combat tactics for these guys?
Well, with all Topaz Dragons, the very first thing to remember is that these are going to be long, drawn-out, frustrating combats, because they've got a decent AC. They've got a small amount of hit points comparatively, at least for the Wyrmling level. But remember, things are going to be doing half damage. Players will be doing half damage, and it's going to be the melee characters that are going to be up front and center getting blasted with this breath weapon, right? That are going to have to get into these fights. Your magic missiles are all well and good. Your fire bolts are fine, but like you're relying on great axes and long swords and stuff, and these are going to be doing what, an average of 5 divided by 2 round down. Like, this is going to be long, drawn out, especially with a huge movement speed.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think that you're going to fight to the death with these guys, they're going to make it so that they weaken you enough, and then they're going to fly away. And I don't see them ever going for the kill, because who cares? They're big picture, right? You will die eventually anyway.
That's exactly what I was thinking, is they're not there to kill. They will do whatever they can to stop you and then get out of there as soon as they can.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They would just sort of hit and run. They would make you like shoot their breath weapon and then get out, because they are very quick in 3 different ways. So they have a lot of exit opportunities. So I don't think they're sticking around. It's just like a one shot and out.
No, that's
Yeah.
true. All right. So, well, these guys don't necessarily seem like your typical ray of sunshine and are certainly a handful. I'm not sure why any parent would even want them, but let's see if they get any better in their dragon young adult years. What can you tell us, Paps?
All right, so for the young, for the creature connection table, I picked out a clan of winged kobolds considered a young Topaz Dragon their monarch, despite the dragon's complete lack of interest and growing annoyance towards them. This is sort of the first instance we have of any sort of minions, I guess, because they are very withdrawn. So I liked the idea of them having minions and not wanting them. But they're sort of stuck. Getting into their stats, they go up to a large creature. They are still chaotic neutral. Their CR is now a 7, and they now can speak common. Their AC goes up by 1 to 17. Their hit points do increase by nearly 100. Their walking and swimming go up by 10, and flying goes up by 20. All of their stats go up by 2, except for dexterity, which stays the same. Constitution, Wisdom, Charisma saves go up by 2, Dex goes up by 1, and their skills, Intimidation and Perception, go up by 3, and Stealth goes up by 1. The resistances stay the same. Blind Sight goes up to 20 feet, and now they do get a multi-attack with 1 bite and 2 claws. And this is where we see the addition of a claw attack. So that is a +6 to hit, a 1d6 +3 slashing. The bite is now a +6 to hit, and the damage increases to 2d10 +3 piercing and 1d6 necrotic. Their breath weapon doubles in size. The DC is now 13, and they do 8d6 on a fail, and everything else about it stays the same.
Ooh, these guys are certainly a bit heavier hitters. So same questions as last time, guys. Let's roll a dice, and let's first start off with what we might see these guys for a quest and an adventure, how they might be involved.
I got a 6.
I got a 13.
I got a 9.
Oh, that means I'm first.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tyler, let me ask you a question. Oh wait, Tyler. Same type of thing. For adventure on this guy, I see them more of an exploratory, a little bit. They don't want to be around people, but they're exploring kind of up and down the coast where the water meets the land, trying to find their own place. And essentially, they're asking the party very reluctantly to help them clear out a space for them, whether it's a place that has an encampment of kobolds or an orc encampment. That would be a perfect place for me to set up right there. I need you guys to go take care of them. And that's kind of what I see. How do you treat that as a party?
Mm-hmm. I would lean into the connection that I had mentioned. Like, they have this group of kobolds and they don't want them. So they need somebody to take care of them because there's too many of them and they just are overwhelmed with it and want to wash their hands of it. So please come take care of these kobolds. I don't want them.
I am going to say that they're going to want to clear out some sort of coastal creature. They're thinking about building a lair. They're trying to get their own home, and it's not going to have lair effects or anything yet. But they're looking to set down roots. The problem is there are merfolk in the water just outside. And fuck, can you please relocate them either north, south, or into the afterlife? I don't care how.
Too loud. Too much partying.
It's too much. They're
How would you
splashing all over.
They keep stealing my dingle hoppers.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Splashing water all over my entrance. How would you guys role play these? I suppose I'm answering first.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever come across when someone who's in the 20s says, I remember when? And then you suddenly like, no, you don't get the permission to say that yet. You don't get to say, I remember when. you have to wait at least another 10 years. And I feel like these young adult dragons are man, I remember when, I'm wise enough. And I'm like, no, you're not.
My kids say that. They're like, back when I was a kid. And I'm like, you're 10.
Exactly. I envision these young adult dragons as that. They are the people who think they know everything.
I feel like you just don't like teenagers.
Oh, I love teenagers.
Well, that right there is a quote we're going to take out of context.
let's yeah.
But
But I would be taking them as that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would roleplay these ones more like how you said you would do the Wyrmlings, where they just like think that they know everything, and like don't need help. I can do this. I don't need anybody around, sort of situation.
I look at it like I think about teenagers where so in our lifespans, the most, at least from a human perspective, the most social part of our lives is as teenagers. Even if we were not necessarily the most outgoing extroverts, our friends and our bonds to our friends matter more when we're teenagers than they do really any other time of our lives. So I think that this is when they are going to be the most outgoing, which is to say they may talk to 3 people. So it's not going to be like a massive like major interaction, but this is as close as they come to being friends with the party. But this is also when they have their first crisis. And that crisis is, oh yeah, right, everybody else is younger than me and they will all die before I do. And fine, fuck it, I'm going to go shop at Hot Topic. Right, like they've had enough of they only need to lose a friend once and then fuck it, I don't want any friends ever again anymore. I was right to be standoffish in the first place. Right, that overreaction that teenagers have. So like, if you're a teenager listening to this episode, Tyler hates you, and I'm apparently being very negative about you.
This is where they get into their goth stage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Where they
Exactly. These are goth.
Yeah, they've pushed back because they tried to get involved with people, but it always just ends in heartbreak and bullshit, and it's no good. This is what they have so many mirrors because they're just applying a lot of eyeliner.
This is where they really start to embrace the cherry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly,
their goth girl stage. That makes a lot of sense.
Honestly, I would have them have a companion at this point. And then, independent of whatever the party tries to do, that companion will die. That is going to happen somehow. And there's no way for them to actually take care of it. And maybe if they save the companion over and over and over again, the companion will eventually just have a heart attack in the middle of the night and keel over dead. Right. And the young dragon, keeping in mind, this is up to 100. They could have been friends for 60 years. Then the human is elderly now. Right. And then just dies. And the Topaz Dragon is like, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm done. Never again. You have broken my heart. I'm better off alone.
I like
I
that.
could go read a shit ton of Edgar Allan Poe.
It really does get them to experience the idea of loss and why they want to have that solitude.
Yeah.
So what are some exploration aspects of this? How would you know that these guys are around? I think one of the things that you will find is, I envision you'd see, if they are around, you might see some glimmering, shimmering from their scales. If the sun is hitting off them, like they might be hiding somewhere, but you might get like a glint in your eye or something. Like, where's that coming from? And you might just catch the glint of a scale of them as they're flying by or as they're running by, and you just don't see them because they still don't like people.
Yeah, but they do have like areas in their lair that would be higher up where they can like bask in the sunlight. So you might get that.
Exactly. And they're
like
they're looking for a place. They don't have a lair yet, but they still like to bathe in the sun wherever they're at.
Yeah, that, I mean, in combination with you would still see things sort of withering away. You would see more new growth, I think, in those things that are withering away. As that is sort of their thing. They don't wither just to wither. But they wither to regrow or let that regrow. So I would play around with that. You would see a lot of new growth, I think, and remnants of things that had withered.
A tree sapling.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys ever seen one of those time-lapse videos of like the fish or whatever that dies, and then all the crabs and the sea snails and everything else like get on top of it and just reduce it to nothing in like incredible rapid time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking maybe this is one of the reasons that they also appreciate the water and why they have a swim speed and they're amphibious and whatnot, is because, I mean, when the ocean takes you, it does not leave evidence. So my thought is maybe the water of a town nearby is becoming spoiled, because they keep dropping every corpse they can find into the water so that it can add to this cycle of regrowth again. And to the point where it will like uproot old trees, like your time is done. And so there's also like suddenly the water gets foul and it slows to a trickle because they've inadvertently built a dam, because the water will make the trees rot faster. So we're just dropping trees now into a river that a town used to rely on. You're going to see massive deadfall areas as well, as they clean the area out. And they have no use for dead things. Like, it's interesting to them, but it's part of the cycle. It's not undead. This is just dead stuff. Let's break this shit down even faster if we can. And the best way to do that is water, right? Is the corrosion, right?
And
so
if you take out a town while doing it, well, guess what? You're helping that one get rid of that town as well.
yeah, that town will move. Whatever.
Mm-hmm. A new one will grow eventually.
What about tactics for these guys? If you engage in combat with these guys, what are the tactics you're using? I think for myself, I want to embrace this idea of their wings and the idea that it's like a propulsion system for them. So if they're on the coast or on a beach side, if they're on a coast, I would envision them knocking you off the cliff. They're not so much geared towards biting and clawing you, but more so they're going to use their breath on you, take your strength away, and then knock you off a cliff into the water. And if they're on the beach side, again, they're going to use that breath, so you have half your strength if it succeeds, and then they're going to take you into the water. Because they're smart enough, they may hate the water, but at that point, they might hate you more. And so they're going to take you into the water, and how fast they can swim is way faster than you can. Even if they're dragging you down and if they're half their swimming speed, it's still more than what you can do. So it's going to take you underwater and use its wings to propulse itself downwards, and you're going to be in a heap of trouble.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know that I'd add anything. I think definitely use the water to your advantage here, because not a lot of your party members will have a swim speed. You might have a couple, but I think for a lot of them won't, and that's you're on the coast or where the water meets the land. So I think, and they are smart enough to use the waters to protect getting into their lair, as we said. So I think they would be smart enough to know to use it to their advantage here and just be angry about it later. Like, that's one, they're very upset when they're done, like, you made me get wet just to defeat you.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're gonna sulk about it later, but
it's like, get the water off me, get it off me. They don't care they just killed someone, it's get the water off me.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I'm going to lean into the teenager shit again. They're not going to fight. They're going to slam the door in your face. You're going to catch them out on their outcropping, bathing in the sun, and they're just going to be like, no, I'm not dealing with you. And they're going to, fly into their entry tunnel, into their lair. And as you start to follow, they just knock a boulder down. Slam. That's it. Now there's no way into the tunnel.
So is this the layer that they are currently making? Because they don't have a layer yet, per se.
They don't have lair actions, which means they're not an adult yet, which means they don't have a big enough horde, but they do have a home.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I believe at young, they might have a couple of homes.
Yeah, but these are not going to be massive, expansive, labyrinths. Like it's going to be a couple of chambers with small hordes in the corner, right?
Perfect. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. So they're gonna slam a boulder down again, non-combatants, and if they're going to fight, it's going to be long and frustrating, and you will probably not get a kill because they will fly away.
Okay.
Yep.
So we definitely see that these are teenagers, dragons, and they haven't grown too much since they were wyrmlings, apparently. They're still just as, well, they don't like people still. But what about adult dragons, Paps? What can you tell us about them?
All right, so looking at adults, starting with their creature connection, I have an adult Topaz Dragon and an adult Bronze Dragon are finding their centuries-old enmity turning into a more romantic passion. Which this is where you get into like fanfic for dragons, like enemies to lovers sort of thing, which they haven't talked about any sort of romance up until like this point. And it's all been very like standoffish, but they do have babies, so they got to have a romance somewhere. So I liked that sort of idea. Looking at stats, they are now huge. Obviously still chaotic neutral. Their CR is a 13 and their languages stay the same. AC goes up one more again to 18. Their HP gets another big bump from 127 to 210, so almost another 100. Their speeds all stay the same. Most stats go up by 2, except for Con, which gets a big bump up by 4, and dexterity stays the same. Wisdom and charisma saves go up by 3, Con goes up by 4, and their dex save goes up by 2. Their resistances stay the same. Blind sight now doubles to 60 feet. And this is where we get our legendary actions and the fabricate that we had mentioned before. Fabricate is a spell they can use once per day, and they can cast with no spell components and using intelligence. They get legendary resistances, 3 a day, where they can succeed on a failed save should they choose. And their legendary actions is using 1 claw attack. For 2 points, they can use psychic step, teleporting 60 feet in an unoccupied space. And for 3 points, they can use essential reduction, which targets a creature or object not being worn. And it can see within 60 feet. The target has to make a DC 17 con save or takes 8d6 necrotic damage. If the target hits 0 HP, it crumbles into dust, that's instant death. So that is a huge.
I love it. I love it. Give me more instant death mechanics.
Yeah. So that was a huge one for this stage. They can also shape change and use psychic step as a bonus action. Their multi-attacks stay the same. Their bite is now a +9 to hit and 2d10 +4 piercing and 1d6 necrotic. Their claw is a +9 to hit and 1d8 +4 slashing. And their breath weapon doubles again in range, and the damage goes to 10d6 necrotic if failed on a DC 17 con save.
Okay, so it's a bit of a major jump with these guys.
Yes.
So how would you guys use this in a quest or adventure? Like, what would involve these guys? Let's roll for it. At 12.
I got a 14.
I got a 5.
For a quest or an adventure, for an adult dragon, it is... look, this guy's a problem. He's been a problem for a little while, and the quest is not anything besides go kill this thing. I want to get into these layer actions. I want to get into the regional effects. This is not my be-all, end-all dragon, even in a dragon campaign, right? I'm never using a Topaz Dragon as my big, bad, evil guy. This is a milestone to hit, so CR 13 feels right. I'm probably not going to fight these guys at Ancient. I'm going to fight them at Adult, because by Ancient, I'm fighting amethysts and sapphires, reds and blues, silvers and golds, right? That's kind of just the unspoken hierarchy that everyone's kind of aware of when it comes to dragons and dragon campaigns. So, so let's get into their lair. Let's fight. Psychic Step is nasty. Change Shape is fun and kind of fucky. But mostly I want to get into these legendary actions and layer actions, and I want to flex these muscles.
I agree. I would want to do the same thing. However, I would want to do it on behalf of a bronze dragon because he likes his lair.
Or the Circle of the Land coastal druid who just loves these giant squids so much.
Exactly. Let's protect them. Come on. There's such an abundance here. We need to protect them.
But if they die, that goes away.
They don't know that.
Yeah.
So it's this idea that they've been hired on to. I like what you're saying, Adam. I want to use the same thing. Let's use these mechanics that are there. You don't want to necessarily everything on behalf of the Topaz Dragon. They said, let's take out the Topaz Dragon. Let's get rid of him. Mm-hmm. So I like the Bronze Dragon, or as you said, even a circle of druids, like several druids all come together and say, we'll pay you this much money if you take him out. on behalf of the giant squids.
Or even just a kingdom nearby that like this guy is ruining all the crops and all the things around it, and needs it taken care of.
Good. So how would you guys role play these Topaz Dragons?
Go away.
Yeah, I think that's very easily said. That go away. They're not as arrogant, I would say, but they are still very much, I don't want to be aware. I don't want to be near you. No, you can't come into my place. Get out. And they'll do everything they can to keep people away. Not kill them, but just keep them away.
If they die, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, they don't, and I don't know that it's a rude thing. Like, they just don't want you there. It's their space. Can you not just respect that? Like I did not invite you here. Yeah.
They're willing to be rude.
They're willing to be rude, but I don't think off the bat they are just rude assholes. I think they just want to be by themselves, and why can't you understand that? So please leave. I don't have a welcome mat out. I want you not here.
I've spent all this time making my lair. Let me sunbathe in peace.
How
about, what is some evidence of there are these adult Topaz Dragons nearby?
Well, you're getting your regional effects now, but I think the biggest clue is going to be the no solicitors sign out front of the lair.
Agreed.
Solicitors will be shot.
I think a big evidence, along with that, if you're going by the sea or by the ship, is if you suddenly see an excess amount of giant squid attacking your ship, because it's within 6 miles. And so you could easily pass by the shore here, and then all of a sudden you have not just one giant squid, but you have like 6 or 7 attacking your ship. I think that's a bit of an evidence that one might be nearby.
I think I would play into they will disintegrate things like ruins and old things that have fallen down, old kingdoms that aren't there anymore, cities that have been left. Your players hear about these ruins that they have to go to collect a thing for whoever, and it's not there. And why isn't it there? It should be, but it's just dust. I think that would be a huge clue that they're in that area.
It's really neat to think about as well. Like, hey, we send a bunch of adventurers to go fight this dragon, and they never came back. And you go and you find their magic items all sitting in piles of dust, which is what's left of the actual. I'm getting real Spielberg War of the Worlds kind of turn to dust shit too.
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. Yeah. So, what do you guys think about combat for these guys? Because for some reason, inevitably, they get into combat.
Yeah, they're going to be hit and run, right? They're fast. They don't want to deal with you. They've got this psychic step, which the crystal dragons also got. So, like, is this just a thing that all adult gem dragons get? We'll see. You'll notice there's no tail attack again. Right. So, is that a consistent factor for gem dragons? We'll see. They don't have anti-life shell yet, which feels stupid, so I'm going to give that to them. This is when I want to flex that. And then, and other than that, like, I'm not. This is a fight. They're going to hit and run. Of all of those customizing dragons things, those options. You have change shape, which they already get. Flyby, mimicry. Mimicry doesn't make sense for these guys. Rejuvenation doesn't make sense. Special senses, they already have blind sight and dark vision, and or tunneler, right? So the only thing I'm really going to give them is flyby, because they're going to hit and run. Then again, I'm going to give everybody flyby because that's scary and stupid, and I like
amazing.
It. Yeah,
they're dragons and they have wings, so why not?
Right.
Why don't they just have that?
Especially because of their unique wings that feel predatory almost. Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I like that for these guys.
It really does make sense for them.
Yeah. I'm definitely like, if you are dumb enough to go into their lair after they clearly tell you not to, like, they're using these lair actions. They're using that essential reduction. And I'm waiting until I think they're at that point where they're looking real bad before I use that, because it takes all 3 of their points. So you got to save that. But they're the cancellation, and they're just gonna really mess up your players and their spell slots and what they can do. The not being able to heal, taking away their spells, and then if you're still a problem and you're still there, they are not gonna care if they turn you to dust.
I would completely agree. Yeah. It's getting through the layer first. They're going to use everything possible to turn you away. And if you get close enough, they will turn you back to dust to go back to the earth. So agreed completely with both you guys.
And then you turn into a ghost and you're part of their horde.
I don't know. It depends if they like you or not. So as we see these adults growing up, how do they look when they become ancient, Adam?
Well, we get a big jump in CR, which I don't think is deserved, but follow me on this one. We go from CR 13 to CR 20, but their AC only jumps by 2 up to 20, which feels low for CR 20. Their hit points are 280 now instead of 210 on average. Again, that's a difference of 70, and by the time that you hit end of tier 4, that is a round of damage from your party. And they will be hitting, right? Like, this is... we are way up there now as far as their damage output goes, and they will have saved it for the ancient dragon. So I mean, you're gonna get hit. Like the crystal dragons, strength and con get a big boost. Mental stats get smaller bumps, and dexterity stays the same. That's pretty standard here. Skills and saves go up as you would expect them to. Speed, damage resistances, languages, and the range of their senses all stay the same. And you get anti-life shell, which is too little too late, and I would have already given it to them by now. So also their passive perception now is 26, and they have that watery sight clairvoyance. You're not sneaking up on these guys. They know you're there. They're an ancient dragon. When it comes to their attacks, again, there's no tail. We get multi-attack here, and with the adult it was 1 bite and 2 claw attacks, and with the ancient it is a whopping 1 bite and 2 claw attacks. Why is this a CR 20? Oh, it comes down to the breath weapon, because the attack damages are pitiful, right? The adult for the bite is 2d10 plus 4 piercing, and the ancient does 2d10 plus 6 piercing. It goes from 1d6 necrotic in the bite to 3d6 necrotic, which is a difference of 7 points of damage. Your barbarian, who is not resistant to necrotic damage, still does not give a shit.
They lost a few teeth getting ancient.
Yeah, and that's, again, if you are hitting, and remember, your guys will have ways around getting hit because it's level 20. If you are hitting, even with your 2 claw attacks, it's 1d8 plus 4 when you're an adult, slashing to 2d6 plus 6. So that's an average of 8, bumping up to a whopping 13, which means that's a 5 more damage on average per hit, like 10 more damage. That is nothing. Even with a flyby attack, I don't care. What does get a decent boost here is the breath weapon. It seems to be the only thing that Fizzban's focused on for gem dragons that we've seen so far. Like, the lair actions and legendary actions and regional effects are all really cool. The lore is great, but when it comes to actually doing their actions, I mean, not even the spell casting is impressive, right? So it's all about the breath weapon. It jumps from a DC 17 to a DC 20 Constitution save. Now it's a 90-foot cone, which is great. That flyby just became even more fun. And now it does 14 D6 instead of 10 D6, which just jumps from a 35 to a 49 on average, which is not a lot. That's an extra 14 damage. Considering this is 7 levels later, this is not a lot. But remember, there's all sorts of, you're not hitting as hard, you are not able to heal. Like, this is going to stack up. It's actually a little deadlier than it sounds. Everything else is the same. Layer actions and regional effects are the same. The legendary action of Essential Reduction is the only thing that mechanically changes, where the DC 19 Constitution save replaces DC 17, and now it does 98 instead of 8d6. And for those of you following along at home to do the math, that means that they go from roughly 28 points of damage to 40 points of necrotic damage, and then they crumble to dust, right? So I'm absolutely going to hit the same person over and over again with the desiccating breath, then the legendary action of the essential reduction, so that I'm hitting them for this big con save, and then another big con save, and then I think the negative energy infusion with the lair action for another big con save. It's all necrotic damage. Bang, bang, bang. It's going to really fuck up one character at a time. And that is, I think, the most impressive thing about this Ancient Dragon. Because, like I say, doesn't have hit points, doesn't have AC. It doesn't have a whole lot of really neat tricks. So it's going to rely on the fact that it can outlast you guys, the party, and it's going to rely on these big con saves. So I am excited about this guy in combat.
I would agree with that. That does sound pretty epic. How would these guys be involved in some sort of adventure?
Want to roll?
Let's roll for it.
7.
I got a 2.
I got a nat 20.
Hold on. Before we get started, though, I want to point out the connections, because I always forget this every time we do a dragon episode now. I chose 2 as a D4 table because Ancient Dragons already have all of the connections from adult and young and Wyrmling that are still, in theory, active. So the 2 that jumped out to me, 2 of the 4, by the way, are about fighting bronze dragons. So one of them is an ancient Topaz Dragons decided to set local ogre and bandit clans against one another, hoping that they will wipe each other out. These guys have a high intelligence score. There's nothing in the stats or the lore that made me think they're schemers, but they are an ancient dragon, so let's not forget that that's always on the table. And then the other one that I really liked was an ancient bronze dragon and an ancient topaz dragon are locked in an ongoing conflict that threatens shipping and caravans around a major city. And that feels to me like the topaz dragon is, stop sailing, stop coming through my lands, stop it. And the bronze dragon's like, I will protect you. And destruction reigns as a result, right?
Nice. I think for some sort of adventure hook or quest for these guys, since it's an ancient dragon and they have the end goal in mind, they are destroying swaths of land. And so you've been hired on by neighboring kingdoms to stop this guy because he's going across the coast, along the coast, just destroying the land to make room for new creation. And there are several towns there and some major cities. Stop him before he gets there by whatever means necessary. It's not going to be a big bad, but it's still going to be a tier 4 thing that you have to do. That's a good side quest. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. You deal with the repercussions of it. But I think it's a fun thing for your party of adventurers to see how they handle it.
I think with these guys, the most fun as a DM you could have is getting your players in their lair. However, that's also one of the hardest things. Why would your players go to their lair? Especially with these ones, they have no reason to go and they have every reason not to go. So it would have to be giving them a reason for that. So I would use their giant squid that they love, wrecked a ship, and that ship had a very important thing on it that they then put in their hoard because they like nautical shit. So they took that ship and put it in their hoard, and this kingdom has requested that you guys go and get this thing back because it's extremely important to them. And I think that gives you a good reason, and it kind of ties in everything that we know about them so far. And it gives you a reason to be there and to use all the fun things that you get.
So bear with me on this. Curse of Strahd. Strahd is a polymorphed Topaz Dragon. Necrotic energy as far as the eye can see. Really cool regional effects, really cool layer effects, and don't come anywhere near me.
Did I marry a dragon? Is that what you're telling me?
I think the only thing that doesn't make sense is all of the mirrors, right? But I think that would be really flavorful in a Curse of Strahd campaign. Like you walk in and like the place is decked out in hundreds of mirrors, and he casts no reflection in them, right? Like that's really good, fun atmosphere that's not going to change the campaign at all. Like Strahd used to be a thing, and Topaz Dragon moved in and was like, oh, you're interesting, you're undead, you're interesting. And then Strahd became too much of a charismatic powerhouse, so the dragon just fucking killed him and
changed shaped into him.
Yeah, and then replaced him, and nobody knows. And so this is when you've already run Curse of Strahd the first time, and then the second time it's come up, and it's just all this like extra necrotic shit happening, and he is not interested in brides or wives. Doesn't care. He's gonna hide in his tower. Every once in a while he'll come out and he'll look at you and be like, stop killing my undead. And then he will go away again.
Sorry, Peps. Well, it's
I
one
was
or
this
the other,
close
you
to
know.
being married to a dragon, and then you took it away from me.
Well, you could still be. He is polymorphed into
That's
him.
true.
You just don't know it.
I was a druid when I married Strahd also, so that...
Oh dear. So how would you guys role play these dragons? How would they be acting? I suppose
That's
I'm
you.
first again.
You're first.
Why is that nat 20? So with the Topaz Dragons, I would definitely play these ancients with a long game in mind. That they do not care for the pleas of other people. Of, no, don't do that. Say, you don't need to destroy us. And go from the aspect of, I'm making room for the next thing to come in. It is my responsibility to do this. So either get out of my way, or I will add you to the dust that I'm going to make this plane into. They just don't care. And then they go back to their lairs. They do this for a short period, go back. But that's how I would play these guys. Just indicative of everyone else around them.
Yeah, I think like they're centuries old at this point. They would go so long before coming out of their lair that I think they would be legends. And they would just be like, to others, I feel like they would be cranky old men. Just like, get off my lawn. But to them, it's just like they're just trying to be themselves in their area without getting interrupted. So they don't want you. They don't want you on their land. They don't want you near them. They're like, just go away, and they're gonna just do their thing. And I think they're very misunderstood in what their thing is, because outwardly it looks like they're destroying things, but they're actually destroying things to replace things, to grow new. So they're misunderstood loners that don't want you on their grass.
I don't know. With these guys, I'm feeling they're you guys are all beneath me. I'm gonna outlive you. The circle of life hits hard, and you will die. Why are you struggling so hard against all of this? Just go over there, eat some calamari, and keep to yourselves. You don't need to come over here.
Mm-hmm.
Also, leave your sparkly shit. But there's almost an ambivalence, a disinterest, I think, from these guys. Whereas before, it would be a not quite violent, but a committed standoffishness. At this point, they just don't want to be bothered. They're going to be pissed if you enter their lair. But if you end up finding one on the edges of their region, of their influence, they're going to be mostly disinterested. You are not worth their time. And they're not interested in anything you have to say. We'll trade with you. I don't care. We have a quest. I don't care. There's a big evil. I don't care. They will all come and go, and everything dies. A circle of life, that's fine. When you are done with your dinner, please just bury the remains at the base of the tree so that the nutrients can hit the soil, and then move on.
I think at this point, too, it doesn't care if it even dies itself, because it realizes, I'm just going to add to the circle of life.
Well, there's always a certain amount of ego. I think that they're going to accept it best in the old dragon's retirement home, right? They're not going to get depressed about it, but they have seen probably their own offspring. Some of them die off as well because they don't. They're not good enough. Who gives a shit? They couldn't make it. So there's a real detached pragmatism, but I wouldn't say it's depression. I think it was when they had their initial, existential crises when they were, young dragons. But I honestly think that at this point, it's more, you have got to try real hard to get them to care about something. And I can't imagine what that thing would be.
I think the only in is just bringing them a giant squid so they don't have to get wet to get it. Like, that's the only, if you want them to listen to you.
You gotta be skip the dishes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Skip the squid.
Yeah. You gotta, I think that's the only thing that they would necessarily care about. If you came and showed up and we're like, we brought you this giant squid.
Or you're willing to wipe out the bronze dragon.
Uh-huh.
The bronze adult dragon. That's just causing him trouble.
Yeah.
So what are some exploration ideas for these guys? How can you know that they are around? One thing I would say is you would know they're around. You would have heard of them. They are ancient dragons. But even if you're just looking at the land, I imagine that the land is, I wouldn't say barren, I would say it has new life around it because they've already destroyed the land around their lair and it's had time to grow since. So it's vibrant land around them because it's gone through this idea of destruction and creation. And it's maybe even done it a few times. So it's even more so. So it looks absolutely gorgeous where they are. And then the seaside, you can hear the waves in the background. It is a wonderful place to be until you realize that thing is nearby, if you don't know already.
Yeah, I think at this point, they are probably in a sort of hibernation in their lair. They really just don't want to see anybody else. So they don't leave except for to get food, which they can just go out through a tunnel into the sea. They don't even have to fly to get to them and bring
Or
it
skip
back.
the dishes.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it would be legends that you would hear through. Yeah, my grandfather said when he was young, he saw this thing flying, and like you said, you would see new growth, and it would be just like nobody knows if it's real or not, or just old wives' tales through the generations of their families, but it is, and it's sort of finding that out.
So I pitched Curse of Strahd a moment ago, but I'm thinking about the environment they would live in, because I think you're right, Tyler. There would be like lush growth all over. A coastal region just teeming with life, but full of necrotic shit. That's Chult.
Oh my gosh. Yes, it is.
There's a Topaz Dragon in Chult, to the point where they might have actually collected a Sararak's horde could be the Topaz Dragon. And the Topaz Dragon, the ancient Topaz Dragon, has left or has died or whatever. And that's what the Tomb of Annihilation is now. All of those traps were set up because fuck off, leave me alone. And a Sararak is the only malevolent presence there anymore. I would totally build a Topaz Dragon into Tomb of Annihilation.
That could absolutely work. Or at the very least, have the spines of a Topaz Dragon as part of the horde.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love it. What about for combat idea, guys? What have you got here? Again, these guys, all layer effects. You are entering into their home. Their home is going to attack you. And as you said, Adam, it's not worth their time unless you make it right up to them. And I have a feeling that he's just at that point going to be angry that I've asked you to leave several times and you have still come here. Tell me what you want now, and then I'll decide. So he is going to use his layer effects to no end on you. And this eradication that he does, he's going to do that as much as possible, one character at a time, and get them until they are dust. But that's essentially, as you said, it's mainly the special attacks that he has, his breath weapon and that eradication ray. That's going to be your big things he's going to use in his combat. Or he's going to take you underwater, maybe even both.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Like you're not relying on your bite and your claw. You're relying on the special things, the layer actions, the legendary actions. Again, saving that legendary action until just the right moment, I think, is key to really take down the player. Because again, you get 3, and that essential reduction costs all 3. So you have to save it. So relying on your breath weapon, relying on your layer actions is the best route to go.
I said it before, necrotic, right? I don't think that they're ever going to get within range, especially with the 90-foot cone for their breath weapon, and they're relying on their regional and their layer effects, the legendary actions and their layer effects. Not only will you not ever okay, so you know how no one can see their horde? Mm-hmm. It's clearly a panic room, right? And
yes.
And I think that they've got tiny little openings where they can like put their snout up against little holes and blow out and fill corridors with their breath weapon, right? But if you try to get up to it and shoot through the holes, it's just gonna move out of the way, like off to the left. You can't get it, right? Like it will have designed this to be a panic room that you can only get into from, an underwater pool that's difficult to find, or you have to fly in from the top hundreds of feet in the air, or they're going to almost be like bunkered in, short of like your meld stone you're going to have an issue dealing with this. And I think that that's going to be the best way that they're going to discourage people from being there.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. A dragon with a panic room. Excellent.
And I think even like once, if you do kill them, getting to their horde room will still be next to impossible, and your players could still die even just trying to get there.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. All right. So before we wrap up this episode up, let's cut to our last ad break.
If you've been inspired by the conversation in this episode, please feel free to reach out and share your creativity and ideas with us and the rest of the community. You can reach us on Facebook and Instagram, or on our subreddit r/itsamimic. Also, if you're feeling particularly generous, please follow and subscribe and leave us positive reviews, likes and comments. Engagement like that help us pop up on search engines and keep this show running.
Okay, so in the past episode, we covered crystal dragons, and they were really outgoing and all about radiant damage. These guys are really introverted and are all about necrotic damage. We're seeing the design consistencies now between what the gem dragons look like. Which one do you like better thematically? Which one are you going to use in a campaign first?
I would definitely use the crystal dragon first before the topaz.
Yeah, I think the crystal dragon's a lot easier to use.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. Like, I like the Topaz Dragon, and there are some specific, like I say, Chult, the second time through Curse of Strahd. There are, as an adult dragon, it makes for a good mid-campaign, quest. But this is going to be one of the ones that if I can only jam 10 dragons into a campaign, I'm not going to use a Topaz Dragon. I probably won't. Like, that's just it. There are some dragons that I just don't... I like all of the metallic dragons, but I'm probably not going to use a copper if I have to knock one out, right? And for me, I wouldn't use a black dragon. If I can only use one per tier, I wouldn't use a black. I find the other 4 to be more interesting. This so far, Topaz is my least favorite gem, and I know we've only done 2, but like I can't imagine the others are less accessible than this.
I like the special abilities they have, but
It
doesn't warrant enough.
Again, you know what? I'm going to use this for? I'm going to use this when I want a shadow dragon, right?
That'll work.
Because that's thematically all going to line up quite nicely. So
that's all for our discussion on Topaz Dragons. Make sure that you subscribe or follow and check back regularly to see what inspirations and insights we'll have for you in the future. Next week, we'll be sitting down to talk about an incredibly common and often disappointing aspect of character creation.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website at www.itsamimic.com. We have a store with some It's a Mimic merch and a Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
This has been an It's a Mimic production. Please check the show notes for this episode to see links, time codes, and credits, and don't forget to reach out and share your own inspirations.
So let's look at the couple quotes we see in the book that directly from him. First one says, a topaz dragon named Blusterfail. No, I'm going to try that again. That's not Bluster. That was a Blusterfail. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know where you're going to get.
You got to do it again because you never know where you're going to get.
I know. I just... Let me try one. Okay.
Although it's the first time that you've probably seen me do this.
Yep.
I do that all the time for Kyle, Dave, and Dan.
Okay.
Because they're the 3 that'll go off on tangents. I don't do that so much with Terry or Pepperina because they're very, very succinct. But no, like you're a tangent guy, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think like the way I met Terry was talking about dragons
Yeah.
on Instagram. Like that's how we started our friendship to begin with.
Well, Peps, it was awesome to do these 2
Yes.
episodes with you and to actually meet you.
Yes.
Okay, see you next time.